I mean, in Japan, they do the thing called, he'll talk about this, the marathon monks, where basically these guys sit for, like, no joke, for days on end. Days. Not going to the bathroom, not moving, not eating, not drinking water. I mean, it's hard to imagine how it would even be possible, but apparently it's a televised event in Japan. Like, they do these long walks and then they do these sits. And these guys, it's all about what Shinzen would say, it's about recycling the reaction. So it's all about, you have these responses in your body. You're feeling uncomfortable. You're feeling, hungry. You're feeling this stuff. But if you can bring enough equanimity and openness to those sensations, then and I had this happen to me thousands of times meditating, where the sensation just boils off. It goes from being pain in your knee to just vibrating, feels like maggots squirming. And then and it's all about how completely present can you be. You can metabolize anything stuck. And guess what? You can metabolize stuck physical stuff too. So if you put your attention on a knot in the back of your, in the back of your shoulder or something, I've had the experience in meditation where I'm just feeling this tension in my body, and I just hold my attention there long enough in this in this open way, not trying to make it change, just curious about it, looking at it. I've had the experience of knots like dissolving, where like an actual impingement or a physical thing seems to change. Now that's really weird, because then you realize, wow, like the mind and body, it's all part of one process, and part of what was keeping that tension there wasn't just the problem in the muscle. There was some part of me that was keeping it there. There was some way in which I was holding on to it a little bit, like holding my breath a bit, or like when you said about releasing layers of tension, you sit down on a meditation cushion and you think you're relaxed, and then you realize you're actually kind of uptight, and you're like, and then you let go of that, and then you settle a little bit more, and then you realize there's another layer of tension, and you can just let go and let go and let go, and it just seems to go on and on and on. And it's like, that can be, I mean, I know another teacher, all he teaches is lying down. He teaches people, Reggie Ray, go to his meditation sits, you're laying on the ground, you're not doing anything. You could fall asleep, doesn't matter. For a month, you're just laying on the ground. And he's teaching you how to actually land on the ground. You could spend a week, 2 weeks learning how to actually lay on the ground. You think you're laying on the ground, but you're still a little bit tense. You're still a little bit holding yourself up in some way, and it's like you're just letting go of those layers and letting go of those layers until you're just like a pool.
It's funny because everyone, we all know that we need conscious awareness. We need to be here and present, but also that thinking of conscious awareness and the control that we try to enact on our environment and all the different ways that the ego forces us to think and pushes us and nudges us. It really is about getting out of your own way in a lot of ways.
It's a paradox too, because the only way to truly surrender to reality is to not fucking care. It's absolutely true. And that's what's going to free you up to be the most effective in your caring. And you cannot get around that head fuck, because it is and that is absolutely true.
Yeah. So wait. I mean, this is the thing that people really struggle with, because a lot of people will hear everything you just said, and and all this stuff about Shinzen, not caring, and think, okay, if I meditate, well, I'm going to be ineffective. I'm not going to be able to do anything.
But that's what I'm saying is the paradox. It's like the person who's most effective is the person who gives up needing to be effective. It's like because that's how you free up all the energy. It's like if you're trying to control everything all the time, you're going to be really limited in what you can actually do. If you just let go and let things be as they are, you're kind of like, it's like you're conserving all this deep, deep well of energy that's there. And then when you really do need to make a move, because it does fucking matter, then you've got the energy to act, and you act in a way that's probably more effective because it's less distorted. Yeah. So it's just skillful use of energy. And that's what I've learned from practice, and even from getting older, because I'm 46 now and I don't have the energy I used to have. It's like choosing your battles. And seeing like now, I'm like, that seems really tiring. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to actually just sit here and chill and relax, so I'll have the energy to do what I need to do when I need to do it. That's kind of, that maturity is sort of, I think, a big part of the meditative like learning.
Well said.
It's so interesting what you're talking about as it relates to like how when you're on Good Morning America, like it's sort of figuring out a way to just be in the moment and guide the conversation, but don't think too much about what you're saying, but say the right things and have poignant things and good questions and being able to engage, but not being too conscious of how it sounds or what you're trying to achieve by your words or the image that you're trying to portray. There's so many parallels that would exist in stand-up comedy, they exist in podcasting, they exist in martial arts. Like when you're doing martial arts, that's a big part of being able to train effectively, is to focus almost entirely on the movements themselves, to have them trained into a way where they're a pathway that you can almost observe. Like you are an observer and a passenger as much as you're the driver of the experience. That it's all just sort of taking place. And when you start tweaking and freaking out about it, that's when everything tightens up. And that's when you start to run into all these like real issues with training.
Well, that's why I find basic, we've talked a lot about, Jeff has talked, as he always does, very beautifully about deep end of the pool, mysticism and, highly attained meditators. But the nuts and bolts basic application of beginner's mindfulness meditation, which Jeff and I talk about, is what allows you to get out of your own way. Because saying to people, hey, get out of your own way, get out of your head, is a very frustrating thing to hear, because you're like, how the hell do I do that? But the basic move of beginner meditation, which is to sit with your eyes closed, bring your full attention to the feeling of your breath coming in and going out. And then as soon as you try to do this, your mind's going to go bonkers. You're going to start thinking about, what's for lunch? Where do I need a haircut? Where do gerbils run wild? Blah, blah, blah. And the whole game is just to notice when you've become distracted in a non-judgmental, friendly way. Oh, yeah, that's anger. That's random thoughts, whatever. Let it go. Go back to the breath. Over and over and over, ad infinitum. And that basic bicep curl for your brain allows you to have a less hostile relationship to your inner chaos. It allows you to see it clearly. And that is the mechanism by which for me at least, by which all of the things we're talking about here, not freaking out on live television, being able to survive in a sensory deprivation tank when you think Joe Rogan might judge you for freaking out and jumping out. All that stuff allows you to see the chatter arise. This basic move that we're doing in meditation, which is just sitting back and allowing all this stuff to come up without trying to grab it or push it away, can help you in the things that we're talking about here. Martial arts, stand-up comedy, all of the things.
So can I just say something about where it turned a corner for me when I was practicing, because I was a terrible meditator. And it was understanding the actual skills that we're building. And that's the thing, I think, that links all of what we're talking about here. When you talk about martial arts, when you talk about being a broadcaster, when you talk about comedy, talk about practice, it's like there are particular kinds of mind-body skills that we're training. And those skills are actually, they have names. There's a feeling of what that's happening that you can experience when you're training that muscle group. And that was, when I started understanding things that way, because of Shinzen, because he talks about it that way, but Buddhism talks about it that way. They talk about the factors of awakening, that you're building up concentration, which is your capacity just to pay attention to what you want to pay attention to. It's like a commitment. Your mind wanders, you bring it back. That's one skill. You're building up clarity, which is your ability to be clear and make discernments of what's happening in your experience, what's happening in a social experience. Is this the right time to say this thing? What's happening inside me? Like, what am I really feeling and versus how am I acting, so dialing up that resolution dial and building up equanimity, which is just can I actually not fight with my experience as it's unfolding? Can I have this centeredness in the middle of what's going on, whether I'm doing martial arts, whether I'm doing comedy, whether I'm doing meditation? The beauty of a meditation practice is it makes explicit what those skills are. In a simple situation with your eyes closed, you can notice when you're being concentrated, when you're being clear, when you're being equanimous, when you're being friendly, which is another good skill. Like, you notice when that's happening. And because you notice when it's happening, you can start to notice how to apply it in every other area of your life. So that's all it is. All practice is about being explicit and deliberate about what qualities of existence, of being, that you want to train in your life. And then you just try to apply it everywhere. And so that's why you can get people who are, I see them as basically meditation masters on a comedy stage, or people who are basically meditation masters in the sports arena, or in a cage match, or whatever it is. They're applying the same principles. So all these are paths that can bring you into more of more presence in your life. And the problem comes when people start saying, no, but my path is the good path. oh yeah, but I teach meditation, that's more fundamental, or no, but I do a body practice, this is more fundamental. It's like, it's about the skills. Those are what's fundamental. Yeah.
Yeah, and the more you can concentrate on that, the more you'll enjoy this weird experience.
The mystery of this weird experience.
This weird experience that doesn't have an owner's manual.
Yes, yes, dude.
That's one of the things that's always freaked me out about the mind and the body. It's like you have this incredible vehicle and this amazing resource that's sort of operating this vehicle, and no one gets a manual, and you're taught how to handle it by people that don't know what the fuck they're doing, whether it's teachers in school or whether it's the kids that you grow up with, or maybe even perhaps your parents or sports coaches. You get shitty operating advice. They're grinding the gears and banging into trees, and no one knows how to handle this thing correctly.
Particularly in our culture. You know, I mean, one of the points that Sam Harris, a mutual friend of ours, great podcaster, great writer, has made in his book, Waking Up, which was one of his many books, but I think my favorite, is that, you know, in the West, we've developed an intellectual and scientific culture that is really robust and has changed the world and is unquestionably valuable. But in the East, they actually were working on the owner's manual for the mind for millennia. You know, you've got 2 Buddha statues in here. 2,600 years ago, this guy, if he even existed, or what we don't know, but this culture of Buddhism, and before that the Hindus, were working on how do you operate this mind? What is this mind? And I think the beautiful thing we're watching now globally, this trend, is the meeting of these two things. And Jeff is one of the people who's most excited about this, is partly why we're such good friends. The meeting of this Western scientific rational culture and this Eastern exploration of the mind.
But bro, I want to just call you on something. Like, I think that's absolutely true. But I also think this understanding, this way of thinking about it, is there in the West as well. That it's like the East has made it explicit in very particular ways, but even within humanistic traditions, if you look at like some of the Greek philosophers, who a lot of them were really mystics, if you look within the Abrahamic traditions, these understandings are there as well, and they're describing it in similar ways. And like, you hang out with some badass Catholic priest who spent his entire life like in poor neighborhoods, helping people out, and like totally being present and working on service, and like the way in which that human being like has learned how to survive and has learned how to flourish and has learned how to be present for his community or her community, it's a lot of the same skills. And there's obviously shadowy aspects everywhere too, but you know, these are human universals.
That's right. And there's a book, speaking of badass priests, there's a book called Tattoos on the Heart, which was written by the guy who ran Homeboy Industries here in L.A. And he, as far as I know, doesn't have any meditation practice, but he talks about, this is a bit of a sappy word, but compassion. You know, actually giving a shit about other human beings, about whom very few other people give a shit. And his whole life is the organizing principle is taking care of these gang members who've been discarded by their families, grown up with parents who were in prostitution or drugs or whatever, and had no shot. And this guy, his whole life, has given them a shot. And if that's not living this stuff out, then I don't know what it is.
So why do we think compassion is a sappy word? I'm just wondering, because I know that it's so common to have those responses. Like, what is that? Do you think it's
the same problem that we were talking about with Soul Cycle before? You know, when it's the presentation. You know, when you it's through repetition, it loses its meaning, and then sometimes you get the sense. I get the sense, at least, that the people who are saying this to me have no idea what it is they're saying or why.
Yeah, they've co-opted the words.
That's right.
They get clunky.
Yeah, they're just they're signaling their tribal allegiance to unicorns or something by just repeating these phrases without really embodying what they mean or something.
Right, like the people that say that I'm not religious but I'm spiritual.
Right?
When they say that, you're like, oh, Christ.